The council in the city of Johannesburg expected to sit today for yet another attempt to elect a mayor. The proceedings postponed on Tuesday after parties were unable to agree on a candidate to replace Jama-ah's Thapelo Ahmad. Let's get some analysis now, and we're joined by Wayne Sussman, an expert in local government matters. Wayne, good morning to you. Your thoughts on which way this council might conclude today?
Well, let's hope there's a conclusion today. There might not be a conclusion today because ultimately there has to be some kind of cohesive decision by the various blocks. And the magical number today is either 135 or 136 seats. Because why am I saying that? Yeah. There are 270 seats in council and you need a simple majority, 50% plus one. Right now, there are 269 out of the 270 councillors because there's an ANC vacancy. Yeah. So the magical number today will be 135 seats. Can the ANC and the EFF find enough support, find common ground on who they agree should lead the city? That's the first scenario. And then we know that the Democratic Alliance and Action SA are not on the same page right now. Action SA is going to put up their own candidate, which is supported by a lot of the smaller parties. And the DA is going to put up Dr. Mpopolazzi to be their candidate. So we know today there will be at least 3 candidates for mayor. Why do I say at least 3 candidates for mayor? We've already said Funzi Ngobeni from Action SA, Mpopolazzi from the DA, and the ANC and EFF will field a candidate. Will it be Kabelo Gwamande from Jama-ah? Or would the Speaker of the Council, Colleen Makubele, like to be the first resident of the city? And then the big scenario is what is Gayton McKenzie and Kenny Kunene and the Patriotic Alliance going to do today? Because they are the kingmakers in the city of Johannesburg.
Well, you've just said something that may startle viewers. Colleen Makubele, she is the Speaker presiding over these proceedings. Why would she suddenly become a candidate for mayor?
Well, there's a risk for her. I do think she'd like to lead the city. I think she's established, in her eyes, she's established herself in the role of the Speaker. And I think that of the minority parties, she's probably the person of the highest stature and the highest profile. However, the big million-dollar risk, politics is all about risks. She cannot be the Speaker of the Council and the Mayor at the same time. So in order for her, the way I understand it, in order for her to be Mayor, she'd need to step off that Speaker's podium. And that's a big risk. So she might be an unlikely candidate, but we know that her name's been jostled about. And then, we're speaking about the smaller parties here, about Jama-ah, Cope, Dada Morero from the ANC. They've got 91 seats. They're the biggest party in the council and by far the biggest party in that slate of parties. I'm very sure that a lot of his supporters within the council bench are saying, why should Cope lead the city? Why should Jama-ah lead the city? We by far the biggest party. The most amount of residents in the city of Johannesburg voted for us, not for Jama-ah and Cope. Dada Morero should lead the city going forward. So there are lots of names, lots of last-minute deals which need to be concluded.
And when you talk about the ANC candidate, Dada Morero, you've said it quite clearly. They've got the biggest numbers, at least within that grouping. There's a resolution that they've just come out with from a NEC meeting that took place recently, and they were very clear that if we have the numbers, we can't allow another or a smaller party to lead. So that capitulation, is that something that you think the ANC will still not have problems doing, even though they communicate one thing, but clearly do something completely different when, I suppose, others are not looking?
Great point. So the ANC, I think there's always factional challenges in any political party, but we're focusing on the ANC now. And this isn't about Ramaphosa versus Zuma. This is, I think, very specific to Gauteng. There are those who are saying Morero should lead the city. There are others, which I think are closer to Lesotho, who are saying, look, we have an agreement with these smaller parties. Let's just give it to the smaller party. So I think there is this to and fro, this infighting within the ANC. However, what Panyaza Lesufi is fully aware of as the Premier, not just the Premier, this time as the leader of the ANC in Gauteng, is the EFF might say, look, Dada Morero might want to lead the city, but he's not going to lead the city because we refuse to agree to an ANC mayor. If the ANC wants to work with the EFF, it's either we do a deal in Ekurhuleni. I'm sorry to just... so much is coming out of my mouth right now. We either have to do
completely understandable. It's a complicated process.
So complicated. A quid pro quo deal with Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg. Otherwise, the second best scenario is someone from the smaller party.
Yeah.
Because, again, the EFF, they've got 29 seats. They're by far the second biggest party within those groupings of parties who are willing to work with the ANC today. So it is so confusing. There's so many permutations. And again, I just want to, just very crudely, at the end of the day, whoever the Patriotic Alliance decides to support today, that person or that candidate will be elected mayor because they have 8 seats. I'll just run the numbers very briefly. The ANC and its allies, remember I said the magical number is 135 today. The ANC and its allies have, without a shadow of a doubt, 129. So that leaves them 6 seats short.
Right.
The DA, let's assume, look, the DA and Action SA are not agreeing with each other, but what's going to happen is the candidate who gets the least amount of votes will get eliminated. And then I imagine they'll fall behind the candidate who remains left.
Right.
The DA and Action SA and the Freedom Front IFP, they have 130. So they are 5 short. Then you have parties like the UDM and Good, who have 1 seat each. Across South Africa, they work with the DA in some areas and the ANC in other areas. Those 2 seats are not going to make the difference. At the end of the day, it's the Patriotic Alliance and its 8 seats which takes you over the 135 mark. So whatever Gayton McKenzie and Kenny Kunene decide today will be absolutely pivotal into who leads the economic powerhouse of South Africa.
Might we end up with Kenny Kunene as mayor?
Well, that is a scenario. Kenny Kunene, MMC for Transport, number 2 in the Patriotic Alliance. That was their demand when they sat around the table for a short meeting with the DA this week, that we'll work with you, but we want Kenny Kunene to be the mayor.
Broadly speaking, the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry President, Mthogulu, telling us, I think at the beginning of this week, that all of this instability and chaos, particularly in the coalition-run municipalities, is doing untold damage to business.
In a very practical level, ward councillors or councillors today, instead of sorting out the challenges, working the small businesses, dealing with the potholes, are gathering for another council meeting, are gathering. So that's emblematic of the challenges over here. The city faces major crises, not just this city, many cities and key towns across the length and breadth of South Africa. And the challenge is we're very short-term orientated. It's about going from election to election. Our cities and towns have a key role to enable business to prosper, to enable an environment which is conducive to job creation. And that's why I agree with the South African Chamber of Commerce. The politicians have to stop with what gets them more likes on social media and get into the business of making sure that we take coalition seriously and that we improve the lives of our residents and the environment for businesses to prosper.
Wayne Sussman, local government expert, thank you very much. Putting things very clearly there. Yes, you might have been confused a little bit. That's because the situation itself is confusing because it's about horse trading. All right, we're going to see what the result gives us.